Hey everyone, it's Cappy. It's our season finale. I personally want to take a quick moment to thank all of our season 10 guests, our partners, and most importantly, you all for listening to the pod. We have a really fun mini-series coming next week brought to you by our friends at PepsiCo Foods, so make sure you stay tuned by hitting that subscribe button on your podcast player or follow us on social media at BT Plate Podcast and at On Cappy's Plate. And Beyond the Plate would not be Beyond the Plate without the incredible team that I feel lucky to work with every season. So as always, special shout out to the best in the biz, Ian Cohen, Joel Yetton, Sean Petrosian, and Sarah McClellan-Me. With that, welcome to Beyond the Plate. This is a podcast where we sit down with the world's culinary elite to explore their journey into the food industry and the social impact they have made in their communities. If you're new to the pod, welcome. If you've listened before, we're glad you're back. So as we prepared for the season finale, I asked our executive producer, Ian, who he was most curious about. Without hesitation, he said he'd love to hear Aaron Franklin's story, the pitmaster behind the Austin barbecue spot that's not only considered one of the best in Texas, it's considered one of the best in the world. Let's go Beyond the Plate. This episode is brought to you by our friends at PepsiCo Foods. All right, everyone, super pumped to have our new friends at PepsiCo Foods join us this season on the pod. Truth be told, Frito-Lay was a partner last season, and Frito-Lay is part of the PepsiCo Foods family, so it's like some of us were family, and now we're all family. All right, here's the deal. Over the years, we brought you memorable conversations and stories that have shaped or are shaping today's food culture. So on that note, I want to share PepsiCo Foods' recent announcement of establishing their first ever culinary advisory board. From chefs and authors to food scientists and entrepreneurs, PepsiCo Foods has brought together 6 industry-leading culinarians, and I have the privilege of being one of them. Together, we serve as strategic advisors to help further the culinary journey at PepsiCo Foods, and we're really working to inspire new ways for people to experience PepsiCo's iconic food brands and bring more smiles and culinary experiences to the table. To me, this initiative is a game changer for the food industry. Personally, I kind of geek out when I talk about my fellow culinary advisory board members, so I want to take a quick minute to share this incredible group. First up is Eric Ajapong. He's a chef and Food Network host. Next is Ellen Bennett. She's the founder and chief brand officer of the culinary apparel brand Hedley & Bennett and the TV host of Kitchen Glow Up. Next is Ali Bouzari, who's a culinary scientist and the co-founder and chief science officer of Pilot R&D. Then we have Tiffany Derry, a chef, TV personality, and owner of Dallas restaurants Roots Chicken Shack, Roots Southern Table, and Radici Wood-Fired Grill. And last, and certainly not least, is Tyler Malik. He's the co-founder and chief creative officer at Salt and Straw. I love this crew. If you want to learn more about PepsiCo Foods, visit PepsiCo.com. Follow them on social media at PepsiCo. PepsiCo Foods, we thank you. All right, so for our audio test, we like to ask our guests 5 of something. So for you, why don't you name 5 essential ingredients in barbecue cookery?
Oh, yeah. Salt, pepper, meat, fire, smoke.
Amazing. You sound good. Let's do it.
Yeah, it's like I've been thinking of those 5 things for my whole life.
All right. Today's guest is a renowned pitmaster and owner of Franklin Barbecue in Austin, Texas, widely regarded as one of the best barbecue joints in the world. Known for his meticulous approach to brisket, he has elevated Texas barbecue to an art form. In 2015, he became the very first pitmaster to win a James Beard Award for the best chef in the Southwest. He is also the co-author of New York Times best-selling book, Franklin Barbecue, a meat smoking manifesto, and Franklin Steak. While people from around the world wait in line almost every single day for his barbecue, I say almost because they're closed on Mondays, we've been waiting for 10 seasons for him to be on this podcast. Please enjoy this episode as we go beyond the plate with the man who Texas Monthly says serves the best barbecue in the known universe, Aaron Franklin.
Well, hello.
Thank you for joining us, sir.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm surprised it's been 10 seasons, though, because I feel like I've been cooking this one brisket just for you guys for 10 seasons. It's about to be tender. Totally falling apart.
So kind of you. All right, wait. So actually, let's cut to the chase here. You know, over 100 barbecue restaurants in Austin or surrounding areas. You sold out a brisket like every single day since you've been open in 2009 or so. What's the age-old myth For those who have not had Franklin barbecue, like what makes it that
Well,
good?
we use a lot of salt. It is pretty darn good. And these days, there's so much good barbecue out there. There's so much great food everywhere. Maybe you have to look a little harder than some other places. But yeah, there's plenty of good food out there. We opened up about 15 years ago and using tremendous amounts of salt, of course. And one thing led to another. People started showing up. And then we were like, oh, well, why don't you just make more? Well, why have you run out every day? But we have to keep in perspective that when we first opened, I was only cooking 2 briskets a day. And one of them was kind of a safety just in case the one didn't turn out super great. Because of course I was learning, but the scale has changed. These days we cook about 120 briskets a day and we still run out, about 3 o'clock-ish. But yeah, I think people show up just to eat some fun food, but it's really so much more than just the food. It's the people that work here. It's the friendliness. It's the good vibes. It's hanging out. It's making new friends. And it's just kind of, I don't know. I think it's just become a thing. People seem to really enjoy themselves.
How do you describe, I mean, you started to describe it, but like, give me the sense, like from when people wait in line, for those people who haven't been, like, how do you describe Franklin barbecue?
I have to be honest. I've never actually stood in line out front. I've stood in line for some other things. Yeah, I mean, people really show up. And I think at this point, most folks kind of know what they're getting into. Like, all right, well, I get here a little bit early. But really, people show up before we open. We open up at 11 o'clock, also known as 10:59. So the first person hits the counter at 11 on the dot. But yeah, people show up and they're kind of ready to hang out. The line has traditionally been a big filter for cranky pants for us. If somebody doesn't really want to spend the time or they don't really want to hang out or maybe they're not that into it, they're probably not going to stand in line. So by the time somebody is gone through all that stuff, they've had all that fun, they've had some beers, they've had some coffees, they've been on a couple taco runs with new friends that they met. By the time they get to the line, they're usually so excited and in such good spirits, and it just makes our jobs so easy. I mean, the food's great, but really, I feel like we just have such good service. That's kind of where it's at. But yeah, people just, I think they just come here to have a good time, really.
That's cool. There's probably some hell of a lot of great stories of people meeting in that line, I can imagine.
Tons of kooky stories. I mean, 15 years into it, and we've had people that have met in line that have become friends and exchanged numbers, and now they take their annual trips to all meet up together for like Franklin trip number whatever. There's people that have waited in line over 100 times. We've got little plaques that we started making for the regulars. You know, we've had people meet in line, start relationships, get married, have kids, start families, all that kind of stuff that now like come and bring their kids here. It's pretty flippin' cool. It's really neat. We had some people get married on the ramp once. All kinds of stuff. It's like watching a TV show about a restaurant.
I love that. What was the original vision, like back in 2009?
To not go out of business. Yeah. Well, my wife and I opened up a little trailer in December of 2009. We didn't really tell anybody about it. We kept it real DIY. She kept her job to pay the bills. And, I went and started cooking and she helped on the weekends and stuff. But a few months into it, it started getting pretty busy. So we just kind of kept going. But I think really, initially the goal for Franklin Barbecue was just to make really awesome food. I didn't really have all the recipes figured out. And to be fair, I'm still learning, really. All of us are. But really, it was just to have a fun place that I wanted to eat at. And I thought was cool.
I mean, like you started with like backyard cookouts and stuff?
Yeah, totally.
That's so wild.
Yeah, well, and that was like a long time ago also, because I'm 104 in barbecue years.
What were you doing at that time?
Really playing music. I had a lot of downtime between being on the road, playing music and stuff. And that's kind of what got me into barbecue, is that I would be home for a month, home for 2 weeks, gone for a month, whatever. But I was severely underemployed. So that kind of opened up a little bit of a window to have a hobby. And I've always been an avid hobbyist. I like to dabble with all kinds of things. Yeah, one thing led to another. And we've eventually opened up a place. In the backyard, we started off having backyard barbecues. And eventually we ended up having one every summer. They got to be kind of a big deal. We're like 100, 150 people were showing up, and I got a job at a barbecue place just to make sure it's something I really wanted to do. I never cooked there, but I had it on top of 2 other jobs. So it was really just like from the first couple barbecues, I had a goal in my head. It's like, all right, I'm going to open a barbecue joint one day. So we did.
It was the first brisket you made at one of those cookouts, or was it like messing around? Yeah.
Well, it wasn't really a cookout. The first brisket I actually cooked, I stayed up all night, cooked a brisket. I'd bought a little offset barbecue pit for $99. This was a long time ago. Bought a brisket at the grocery store and built a fire with whatever junky wood was in the backyard, like every Texan. Yeah, I think that first brisket, I played an in-store record release party that day. And then after the thing, we had like half a keg of Lone Star left. It's like, all right, hey, I cooked a brisket last night. Let's go back to the house. And everybody was really just like, yeah, it's great. Sure is good. I'm pretty sure it was awful. But I also had no context.
Did you have any cooking experience before like these cookouts or the trailer or anything?
Sure, I could boil water. I didn't work in restaurants. I had worked in restaurants, mostly front of house, but playing music, I never really could hold down a job where I worked at night because I was off at clubs and stuff, at night. So I never really worked in the kitchen. Love food, learned how to cook from my grandparents, grew up around food. My parents had a restaurant when I was a kid for a few years. So I was kind of around this stuff quite a bit, but much like everyone in my family, just absolutely love restaurants. I think restaurants are so cool. I love the whole orchestration of it. I love every aspect of a restaurant. So I feel like maybe I knew that was going to be my trajectory when music kind of played out. And eventually it did, although I still play. So
Wait, you grew up in Texas, right?
I did.
What part?
Bryan College Station, about 2 hours from Austin. I got here as soon as possible, though.
Was it like mom and dad were both at the restaurant?
Yeah. They owned a little barbecue restaurant for a few years when I was a kid. They got the memo pretty quickly that it was really hard and they sold it. So I think they only had it for a few years, but I grew up in a family business that my grandparents owned. That was a music store. So really most of my mom and pop kind of business kind of stuff, was really born out of a music store.
Did mom or dad cook a lot? Like, did they do the recipes at the restaurant or does someone else handle that?
Well, they cook. My dad made all the food at that restaurant. I can't say I remember it being particularly awesome. Granted, that was the 80s and barbecue in the 80s was a completely different scene than it is now. So I don't really remember. I was only about 10 years old or so, but I think he had inherited those recipes from the guy that he had bought the restaurant from. I don't know that he really chefed his way into a barbecue restaurant.
It was a nerve-wracking cooking them barbecue for the first time, like when you first made it for them?
Oh, I think they really didn't know any better. They're like, yeah, it's fine. Sure is salty. You're like, yeah. Yeah, gosh darn right it is.
That's so funny. Okay, so growing up, you thought you were going to be a musician more so?
I'm not sure what I thought. I knew I was going to do something. I didn't know quite what. I'm just this kind of guy that I love carpentry. I love welding. I love designing things. I love architecture. I love cooking. I've got so many. I play music. I love building tube amps. I love, there's a lot of stuff that I really enjoy doing. And I think I always just knew that one of my weird hobbies was probably going to yield a career in one shape or form, but I didn't know what. And really, the first brisket that I cooked in the backyard, that was terrible. I do remember sitting in the backyard in a lawn chair with a Lone Star, be smelling the smokes and be this is it. This is what I'm going to do. And I remember a little light bulb went off. It's all right, I freaking love this so much. And really, once I started getting into the science of it, which I'm a science nerd also, I really just fell in love with the art of cooking barbecue. And I love cooking in general, but barbecue to me is this perfect kind of mishmash of craft and science. You can't have all craft because it won't be very good, but you also can't have all science because it also won't be very good. So you have to ride the wave in the middle in a good bit. And that for me is just the gift that keeps giving. You always get to learn something. You always get a feel for something. You always get an idea, get to try something. But yeah, barbecue became my thing. And I love playing with fire.
I mean, I take it you still love doing that, obviously. You do these amazing collab events. Is it still exciting to start a fire and tend to the brisket and other things?
It can be. It's also terrifying. At this point, I don't really cook shifts at the restaurant anymore. I'm usually just doing emails or fixing the light bulb or, I'm just got 1,000 things going on. I can't spend 12 hours every day just in a smokehouse. I'm not super duper in the habit of just throwing some briskets on a smoker and letting them rip and they're oh, they're amazing. If I do an event, I do a couple test cooks beforehand just to kind of get my bearings back a little bit. Because again, even if you do that stuff every day, if you don't do it for a day or two, you kind of lose your feel because you forgot the weather changed. The wood changed, the meat changed, the climate is maybe a little bit different in general. So where you pull things and how you feel things changes. And if that's the luxury that we have at Franklin is that we do that stuff 24 hours a day, 6.5 days a week. So we remember how they felt yesterday. And if they were a little over, a little under, maybe a little crunchy on the edges, maybe whatever, we can always roll that stuff into the next cook. Because we have the context. We have all the data right there. So like anybody else, if you don't cook for a while, it's oh man, I better see what this weather, what the carryover is going to be like or whatever. But it's also terrifying to do events, especially big events, because everybody thinks, oh, if I'm there, they're going to have the best piece of barbecue they've ever had in their lives. I'm only human. It might not be true, like without doing that stuff, again, every day, it's kind of a crapshoot when you show up to an event and just do something, Not a total crapshoot, but, it definitely, if you're on a cooker that you've never cooked on, cooking wood that you've never cooked with, cooking briskets that had a weird diet and graded a little bit differently, or maybe they're too young, or maybe
there's a lot of variables.
There's a lot of variables.
You have an event next year with Francis Malman.
Oh, yeah, that is true. Terrifying.
Okay, thank you. Tell me more.
Well, I'm going to do some test cooks.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like you're almost prepping for, not that it's a competition, but you're like prepping to like get your shit together, right?
Yeah, it's a big trip.
Is it out there?
It is in Argentina. It's in Mendoza. And so I'm taking 3 cooks with me. That'll be great because we're going to do 2 24-hour cooks back to back because we're doing a test run before we get into the actual event. So we're going to real time fire everything. We're going to take notes, and this is where I kind of excel. Like I'm really good at winging it, but I've got so many tricks up my sleeves over the last 20 years that I can be like, okay, my oven looks like this, cooker's like this. I can make a game plan really, really good. That's really kind of my secret weapon. So there's that kind of going on. I'm going to do some test cooks here in Texas with some grass-fed beef. And we're working on certain cows down in Argentina that we're going to finish with corn to try to get them Americanized on their diets because I need that fat to build up in a certain way.
Already doing this.
Already doing that. Already talking to some farmers down there. But I won't know until I get there. So I could just make assumptions here, get something grass-fed. I'm going to pull out an old cooker that I haven't cooked on in probably 10, 15 years. It's busted. It's messed up. I'm going to cook on it anyway. And we're going to do test run in real time in Texas. Then we're going to travel. Then we're going to do 1 test run before the event. And then I'll do a class also. And part of that class is, hey, just winging it. Make a game plan, see what happens, collect the data, make your notes, make the next one better. Yeah, I'm really nervous about this, though. This is so out of my league. Oh, my gosh.
It's so great. It's so great. Okay, you mentioned teaching. You've done a masterclass. Like, for the future Aaron Franklins, what are a couple like key things to be successful, say, in a barbecue restaurant?
Well, I think some things that really were a big deal to me in the early days was really being really stubborn on just doing my own thing. And if you think about like when Franklin Barbecue opened, the barbecue scene didn't exist the way it does now. You couldn't get online, learn how to cook something. You couldn't really buy any barbecue books. You couldn't, there was no master class about this stuff. You just kind of had to figure it out. But for me, one of the things that was really important in the beginning of Franklin Barbecue was to not be influenced by anything else. Like I didn't ever want to be like, oh yeah, well they cook their ribs like so-and-so, or their brisket tastes like this because they use this, right? I wanted it to be like completely from the heart, completely Franklin Barbecue, completely, what I wanted to do. And that allowed me to figure out this North Star in my head and then reverse engineer everything and then start to practice working into it. And I still do that. So I think that's a helpful way to think about food. Because if you're getting into, you want to open up a barbecue place or any restaurant for that matter, I think it's really healthy to not look to what other people are doing, but to look within and do what you want to do and figure out a way to make it so flippin' good that you're just so proud of it and you could really pour your heart and soul into it and really be passionate and proud of what you're doing. Yeah. And we still do that. Like I refuse to change anything that we're doing here just to chase what somebody else is doing. I don't think that's the right reason. So that's probably my lame old man advice.
I think it's fantastic. And hopefully some lame young people will take that advice. Are you ever like working or glancing around the restaurant and like a random celebrity or chef gets to the front of the line and you're like, oh yeah, what the hell, all man? The time. So funny. And can you share any, or did you not like, no?
No, we don't kiss and tell. We've had some pretty cool people come through here.
I love that. So cool. And you're like, oh shit.
From that band. That's neat.
So we talked about the line earlier. You ever walk out there and like are worried about the turnout?
I think this many years into it, I know when it's going to slow down and I know when the seasons are. I know when it's going to get busy again. And it's always busy, but I know obviously when it's 20 degrees outside, no one's going to stand out there. So I don't get nervous like I used to. Like I remember like in the first several years of the place, I'd pull up in the morning like, oh my God, there's nobody in line. This is the beginning of the end. It's all over. Turns out it was just cold or rainy. They'll come back. It's fine. Yeah, I don't feel too nervous about it anymore.
You mentioned like you're taking a few of your staff when you go to Argentina for that event, but I have to imagine hiring your staff or pit masters, whatever we call them, is slightly different than hiring like a line cook. I think, maybe not. What do you look for when hiring?
We don't hire often. We've got really crazy good retention here. Most people, I think some of the shortest spans we've got are hitting about 3 years on average. And we've got a lot of people between like over 10 years now. We've got super amazing people that have been here a super long time. They make a good living. They raise their families. They've got benefits. It's a really healthy place to work. And I'm really proud of that. But when we do hire people, it is kind of tricky because you kind of, you don't want somebody who's just going to pop in for 6 months and then take off and go work somewhere else, because it takes a long time to get somebody where they're really up to speed on this stuff. It takes really a couple years before somebody starts getting good at it. What we really look at is just how well they're going to fit in, how their work ethic seems, if they seem kind, good-hearted, all the kind of normal stuff, because you have to spend so much time with somebody and you have to also trust them to really be a self-starter and do things on their own. And you might get to work at midnight, you might get to work at 2 a.m., you might work at 10-hour shift or 12-hour shift or something like that. So there's really a lot of trust involved in it. I typically look more for someone's character and if I really think they're going to be in it to win it, or if they just kind of rub me the wrong way a little bit, like, nah, they're just trying to learn some quick stuff and they're just collecting a bag of tricks and then they're going to go off somewhere else, and we won't hire those people. Or I'm not here to build a resume, but I am here to build a good family.
Outside of the barbecue world, are there any like chefs you keep like that inspire you?
Yeah, there are. There's a lot of great food. I run a food festival called Hot Luck here in Austin, and I literally invite all the chefs for this thing. And really, a lot of chefs that I typically really get into, and there's always like new people coming along all the time that I'm super blown away by, but really it's kind of like the old faithfuls, and that's kind of, I think, maybe the range that I kind of also sit in, like your Chris Shepherds, your Ashley Christensens, your Renee Ericksons, people that are just been around. They've created a really good culture for people. They've built some amazing places. They've got a great eye for design. They've got a great eye for nuance, not just making great food, but they can actually orchestrate like an entire situation that's pleasing to a lot of people, make good food and treat people well. Those are the kinds of chefs I'm always like, oh man, those are my people.
Okay, so I'm always fascinated by this next part I want to get your thought on, but you hear these like kitchen stamps, if you will, I'll call them, of like people having worked somewhere in the industry. Like maybe they worked for Danny Meyer and Union Square Hospitality Group, or
who hasn't?
True. Or you hear someone and they say like, you got to check out this restaurant. He worked in John George's kitchen. And like similarly, I would say around Austin or Texas in general, every now and then you hear like they were at Franklin, which feels like a strong stamp of approval. There's been plenty of celebrities and important people that come through your line, from the Jimmy Kimmels of the world to the President Obamas of the world. It's a long list, but did you ever think this would be your life?
Back in the day, I really saw our future as just running, kind of like Bob's Burgers. That's really what I thought it was going to be like. Running a little mom and pop shop, like we close up in the evenings and it's just people playing dominoes, like real kind of old school stuff, because that's like the romantic part of barbecue that I really love from back in the day. Like you just got these old squeaky doors, the aesthetics of the stuff. I love it. But I really thought we would end up like at Bob's Burgers, just like a family run spot. And we're just like, we're just making food. And it's certainly not how it's turned out. But I couldn't be more proud of this place and I couldn't be happier with how my life has ended up. I tell people all the time, I really do have the coolest job in the world. I can't imagine anything else I'd rather be doing.
We talked about the Francis Mallman dinner next year. I hope everyone knows who he is, but you may not. And if you don't, check this guy out. He's got a Chef's Table episode and all the things, and this OG live fire cooking chef who's incredible. And when I saw that collab, I was like, that is like the coolest shit ever.
Worlds collide.
Yeah, totally. Do you try new barbecue? Like, I'm curious about that. I talked with Mark Rosati back in the like early Shake Shack days, and I know he like traveled the world and he's always likes to see what's going on in the burger world. But is that something you are interested in, the barbecue world?
A little bit. I don't really. This sounds terrible, and I've really got to stop saying this. I don't really go out of my way to just like go eat a whole bunch of barbecue, but I do get really excited when I cross paths with a place. Maybe I'm traveling somewhere. Maybe I just, somebody mentions like, oh, hey, have you checked out so-and-so's place? I'm like, man, no, but that looks good. You can look at a picture and be like, holy crap, that guy knows what's up. And then I'll get really excited to go try a place like that. But I'm more like quality over quantity, I guess. Or if I'm traveling somewhere and somebody like Sam Jones is cooking a whole hog somewhere. I'm like, yeah, heck yeah, I'm going to pop by because I can't wait to put that in my mouth. I want that whole hog so bad. Or like Rodney Scott or one of those guys. Like there's so much good food out there, but I'm definitely not just jumping in the truck on a Tuesday afternoon to go see if I can eat at 10 places in 3 hours. It's not quite for me. I will say there's some good stuff out there. There's some really, really good barbecue out there.
You know, you mentioned earlier, there was a quick in passing line of like, you're still learning. To me, and maybe it's because I'm not experienced in it, but like I can cook. When it comes to barbecue, it's daunting to me and I get the science of it. But the variables with like the time, the temperature, the fire, the wood, the seasoning, like it's wild.
It's crazy. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Is there like a time recently where you fucked up a brisket or you do these practice runs like we talked about?
Well, I do practice runs. Any event, I'm usually less than thrilled with the quality of it just because like you get one shot and you're cooking 60 briskets and you're up all night. And it's like, oh man, like I should have just let him go an extra 3 minutes. That would have been perfect. So there's always that stuff, but I haven't messed anything up too bad in a very long time. But that's the thing, like the more you cook, you know, not just barbecue, but anything, or the more you do anything, I guess, the better you just get at it because you learn a little something, you can stick it in your back pocket. You're like, oh, okay, well, these were like this or this was like this. You're just kind of always collecting data. That's all I do. I'm just a big sponge for cooking data. And then you can make educated decisions on how to game plan that stuff like I was talking about. But really, that's how you break down how daunting of a task cooking 1,200 pounds of meat is, you know, and like when you're just kind of getting into it, it's like, that's a big task. So like anything, like building a house, you can break it down into pieces, build your foundation, you build your walls, you do the electrical, you do the plumbing, you build the roof. And before you know it, you've got a whole brisket meal ready to go. But once you kind of pick it apart into smaller pieces and kind of know how to handle it, it can become a lot more palatable, I guess.
Do you carry that precision into other areas of your life? Like with like making an espresso or something?
Yeah, I've got some real problems. I love a good espresso and I will accept nothing less.
But it's like, I mean, it's the machine, it's the temperature, it's the grounds. It's, you know, I guess in a similar way, a lot of variables there.
I really have to watch it because I love that stuff. But now I'm spread so thin with work stuff that I can't just spend very much time on anything. Just too many things going on. But yeah, I can get really nerdy. I could get nerdy on whiskeys. I can get nerdy. I've been pumping the brakes on wine stuff because that's a huge can of worms that I'm just going to wait for until after I'm retired one day. Like, okay, I'm ready to tackle jazz and wine. I can really get nerdy and excessively detailed on things. And not like in a weird way. It's like, oh, this is all I'm doing forever. And it's like, man, this could be better. Like so with the espresso, like, the grind's a little off. I don't know if I want Ethiopian for this. I think we're going more Guatemalan. Oh, I think pour over's a better thing for this, but yeah.
It's hard. I don't always have the patience. I'm very patient, but like I got this new coffee machine and I like wanted to dial it in and I'm like, I need to fucking dial it in now. But like, no, you got to have
takes time. 5
of it, you know, this way, and then maybe play with it, and then 5 of it that way, and then maybe play with it. You're not just going to like, no, you know.
Yeah, and it's impossible. I'm really patient until I'm not. But I think across the board, I'm probably pretty impatient as a person, unless it's like I get to learn something or tinker with something, and that's fun. But I'm curious, what kind of coffee situation did you get?
So I went from 0 to coffee snob like really quick. Like I lived in New York. I barely drank coffee. My wife and I moved back to Chicago. We lived above this coffee shop. It was called Cafe Streets, but the owner, they started a roaster called Metric. It's delicious coffee. If you haven't had it, I'll send you some. But
yeah, I haven't had it.
It was one of the original roasters at like Intelligentsia. He left and, you know, started this. Metric does great stuff. So I would bring beans home to the owner. His name is Darko. He's from Serbia. I would bring beans home and he would like kind of school me. He would put them in his hand and just like school me on the beans. So all of a sudden I'm like drinking, cortados and pour overs. And from like nothing to
eyeballs.
Yeah. And I couldn't I'll go to Starbucks for things, but like,
well, sometimes you're on the side of a highway and you got to do what you got to do, you know?
My first real, I guess I went like to the Mocha Master is what I was using, the machine, which I really enjoy. And then I was grinding it. I would go to his shop and he would grind it for me, but then I got a grinder and, you know, now I got as a gift, like one of the super automatic machines, which feel like a little bit of a cheat. But
like a super automatic espresso?
Yeah. Like you put the beans in and it grinds it for you and pumps it out. But I've actually been using these beans from Two Brothers, which is like a brewery out here, but they do coffee roasting too. They're pretty good.
Yeah. Not to totally derail the conversation, but I am also a bit of a coffee nerd. We have an espresso machine here at the restaurant, a 2-group Linea that's been heavily modified and all that stuff because we have an espresso barbecue sauce. But really, maybe the espresso barbecue sauce was an excuse to have a good machine. But yeah, we run a Slayer at the other place. But I had a kind of like you, it was a semi-automatic espresso machine. I got real into it. It's like, all right, took a backup Mazzer grinder from the restaurant, took it home, and this is great. And I got so frustrated with it because you just can't, and that's why fully automatic probably works out pretty good for you. I would get so annoyed because the humidity would change and you got to pull 3 or 4 shots to get it just right. And I'm like the guy that I don't like to do the little clicky tampers. I like to feel it. I don't like to weigh everything out. I just like to know how much to dose, like a portafilter and stuff like that. And eventually I completely just gave up on it. I got so annoyed with it and I was wasting so much time and coffee just fiddling around with this thing. Now I just do straight pour overs at home.
But coffee is one of the things when I travel, I love seeking out good food, of course, but like finding a good coffee shop. It depends what I'm in the mood for. I'm a big cortado fan. I'll get like a small pour over or drip or something like that. But not everybody does the cortado correctly. They make it a little too hot.
That is true. It's supposed to be cooler. That brings out the sweetness.
Yes. Should be a little bit more chuggable. If I take that first sip and it's too hot, I'm like, fuck. It's nice to know when they like when they appreciate their craft. And I would question them and I'm like, don't mean to sound like an asshole, but like, how's your cortado?
Well, you can like hear the milk and you're like, oh, it's getting too hot.
It's funny. Anyway, thanks for joining our coffee podcast. So
I can talk for hours about this stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's another fascinating thing too is coffee, that whole process, the beans. All right, you discussed how there will never be a second Franklin. For those of us who don't know, can you share why?
Well, there aren't enough cows. Really, there are a lot of reasons. The biggest reason is we wouldn't be able to keep it as good as we want it. You know, we've got about 40-ish people that work here. We work 24 hours a day. We cook about 120 briskets. That's about 40,000 pounds a month of brisket that we cook. And we have 37 seats in the dining room. So it's a really small place with super high volume. And if we ever opened up like another barbecue place, the first problem is supply chain. We would need to gestate animals 3 years in advance, which means we would have to sit on these cows for 3 years to raise them properly and all that, because we're almost vertically integrated on everything, very much into the beef stuff. That's really, I spend the majority of my job just like working on beef stuff. So there's that. There's the supply situation, and then there's the employees. Who's going to cook the stuff? Like, we're all here. We talk to each other all the time. And, you know, we have our text threads where we like roll each cook and we talk about things and bump it up 3 degrees between hours 5 and 7 tomorrow, blah, 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 wrap this one a little bit earlier. And like that level of detail, we just can't split it off. It would take probably half the magic from what we've got here. And so then we would have 2 places that are just half as good as they should be. And it's very much not worth it. You know, and I think about the carbon footprint also, and just kind of like our negative impact that we would have by pumping out that much food. It's not very important to me to expand like that.
You must have had, I mean, if I say like over 100 people who have come to you or opportunities to open, whether in next door or in another country, I'm probably lowballing. No?
Yeah, it's probably a lot more than that. Unfortunately, the office kind of filters most of those emails. And I think at this point, people kind of know, like if they know anything, they're like, oh, no, Franklin's, they're not doing it. But we still get asked a fair bit to do things. But, you know, this is our little family business. This is what we do. And the reason why it's so good is because everyone cares so much. And if we spread that too thin, then what's the point? It's just not, that's not why we built this thing.
So tell me more about like Loro. Like you've dabbled outside of Franklin with Loro and some other places. Like why do you do, which I fucking love. Why that?
You know, those things. So we've been doing this Franklin thing for a while, and it's really cool because finally I'm not the guy that's cooking ribs every day. I'm not the guy that's slicing meat every day for lunch. Like I come and go pretty good. I mean, I'm here right now in my little office in the back, but that's kind of opened up some opportunities to be like, okay, well, maybe it'd be fun to like collaborate with some friends and maybe do something else. That kind of keeps my creative juices flowing because I'm very much driven by creativity and always want to have a project that I'm working on, always want to be working towards something, always get excited about learning coffee or learning how to do this or building this or whatever. So that's kind of where Hot Luck comes in, is that I get to every year create this festival. But that's how Loro happened also. I'm like, well, that seems neat, you know, and I don't actually have to physically go run it. So that's also cool because it's not taking too much away from what's really important over here at Franklin. And then we have another place called Uptown Sports Club here in Austin that opened up about a year and a half ago. And that's kind of like a seafood tower, Texas brasserie, little New Orleans-y kind of vibe. Yeah, that's super fun. But that being said, it's those extra things that kind of keep me excited, where I'm just not every day like, time to make the donuts.
That was actually my next question. I wanted to hear more. I've never been. I hear so much about it from inside the community and other people who have attended, but would love for you to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. It's super fun. You should totally come. I know a guy. Let me know. But it happens on Memorial Day weekend here in Austin. It's a 3-day weekend for those with normal jobs. And for all of us in the restaurant world, it's a pretty busy weekend. But yeah, so it starts on Thursday. We book about 40 bands from all over. Sometimes we'll do reunion shows. We book clubs all over town and book music. And then I also invite about 70 to 75 chefs from around the world. And invites are starting to go out right now. But it's just a super cool little food and music festival. It's real fun. It's meant to not be stuffy at all. The chefs that I invite might be some super killer up-and-comers, might be some people that just have little tiny, tiny restaurants. Like we tried to set the whole thing up from the backside where it supports chefs. It's like, okay, well, how can we help you succeed? Instead of just being like, okay, here's the field and $300. Need 5,000 portions, go. It's like I work with chefs on their dishes. We kind of help, coordinate things. We take care of the food stuff. We have chef logistics. We set up the kitchens. We have hands for everything. Like it's a huge production on the back of the house side. And the front of house side it's just a heck of a lot of fun. It's just a big party.
That's cool. So that's one of the other things I geek out about because I was one of the first full-time employees of the South Beach Wine and Food Festival.
Fun.
And I worked on Aspen Food and Wine Classic for many years. So I love hearing about all the different festivals and what goes into it.
Yeah, this one, it's kind of like the anti-corporate food festival.
Yeah, that's cool. And is it spread out? Like, is there a main event or is it spread out all over?
It's sort of spread out. So we have some reoccurring venues that we do, but like a Thursday night, it'll be a chef welcome party at Uptown. It'll be a whole enchilada, which is the all-in pass that people buy because it's literally the whole enchilada. They'll go to a party. We'll book a big show for Thursday. Friday night will be a big like nighttime whatever event that is. And then Saturday, it'll be out at a ranch, and that's where it's more of a live fire event, and I'll let chefs design some cookery that maybe they want to cook on, and we'll build it in our shop, and then we'll have it, and then we hang on to it for the next year. And Andy Ricker's got a grill. We've got like all these like grills and stuff that we've built for chefs over the years. And that's the Saturday. And then Sunday is a brunch. And then there's like a bunch of daytime stuff like Southern Smoke Foundation will do a thing during the day. We'll have a Ben's Friends industry run during the day. On Saturday, we'll do like a juice thing, and there's all these little like industry little satellite things going on too. And then also I'll invite chefs to do takeovers of restaurants. Now it's kind of getting to be fun. We're 8 years into it, and a lot of friendships have been made, which is very cool. But a lot of those chefs that are coming in for Hot Luck will do dinners at other friends' restaurants, and there's just a lot of little things going on these days, which is so cool.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I'm glad you mentioned Ben's Friends. Actually, we just had Gregory Gourdet on the podcast recently, and he had mentioned the work that they do.
Yeah, they do good stuff. That's a great bunch of people.
Very cool. So we briefly mentioned Masterclass, which you've done, which is just incredible. Are there any like crazy stories from like a random person that took a masterclass and then opened a barbecue place in their town, which now that I think about it, probably isn't that crazy? I don't know.
It might not be that crazy. I haven't heard of anything, but I'm sure it's possible. It's certainly possible.
That's funny. All right. So I want to talk about social impact and giving back. I briefly mentioned you before. Our podcast celebrates this with all of our guests, and learning how all of our guests do it is really hugely inspiring to us and really keeps us going here at the podcast. I would love for you to share some of the work you do or have done in the community. I know you mentioned Southern Smoke and whatnot, and Ben's Friends, but I would love for you to just go forth.
Yeah, for sure. I'm pretty darn lucky in this restaurant thing that we can say no to almost everything, and I get to say yes to things that I actually want to do. And the things that I actually want to do event-wise, or going out and cooking for things, or doing little dinners or auction items for fundraisers and stuff like that, is always philanthropy. And, we'll auction stuff off with Ashley for Triangle up there in Raleigh. And then, I've done Southern Smoke here in Houston every year that it's happened. That's the one event out of the whole year that we just take trailers and we go cook in a parking lot. And it's cool to be able to raise money for a good cause, help friends, help people in need, whatever it is. Like, if you want to get me, make a good cause. I'll be there. But, the one that's the biggest one that's really close is, of course, Southern Smoke Foundation, based out of Houston, now spreading throughout the country. That was started by my good friend, Chris Shepard. And initially it started as a benefit for MS and stuff like that. But now it's turned into a full, like an all-out nonprofit that raises money for the hospitality industry for emergency relief. So it could be anyone that's worked, maybe a dishwasher in a hotel, or maybe like the chicken nugget fryer guy at McDonald's. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, if you've been in the industry at all and you fall in hard times, maybe you've been diagnosed with something terrible, maybe you lost your house, maybe there was a tornado, maybe a hurricane wiped out your city, maybe your restaurant burned down. Like, it doesn't matter. If you need help, Southern Smoke is there. And I feel so passionate about that. I've been fiddling with that stuff for a while and do whatever I can to help. But yeah, good bunch of people. They've helped a lot of people. And they also do mental health stuff too. So that's kind of a newer leg of Southern Smoke, which is really helpful for the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. They've been doing a lot more of that. They have partnerships with hospitals they're making across the country.
Absolutely.
It's amazing stuff. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'll say this for one last time this season, but because I repeat it so often, but if it makes a difference for one person, then so be it. But give what you can when it comes to giving back for the listener, whether you're sharing your voice, your dollars, or your time. It's all very helpful. You could have 100 social media followers, but you could make a huge difference for one person who may be in need and see it. You don't have to have deep pockets. You could have $5 and that could make a huge difference for a family and meals and time. 30 minutes a month. Go volunteer at an organization that supports a cause that's meaningful to you. It doesn't have to be in food. It can be in food, but a few different angles to look at for how you can give back to your community. Mr. Franklin, speed round time, really quick.
Uh-oh.
Number 1, what did you have for dinner last night?
I ate at Suerte here in Austin.
Name a smell in the kitchen you love.
Garlic.
Name a smell in the kitchen you hate.
Burned roux.
What pisses you off in the kitchen?
Anything that's not totally clean.
What makes you happy in the kitchen?
Anything that's perfectly clean.
Do you have a favorite late night or early morning snack?
Oh, I do. It's any kind of like charcuterie. Could be cheese and crackers. Yeah, that's my guilty late night snack.
What actor is playing Aaron Franklin in the movie?
Oh my gosh. Maybe that guy from Jackass? I don't know.
That's funny. Johnny Knoxville, is that?
Man, I don't know. Because anybody I say I feel like would be overly flattering towards me. And that's not a good look. Some middle-aged guy with glasses and salt and pepper hair.
All right. For our final last question of season 10, where are you smoking brisket and who are you making it for? Who's around this table?
I'm probably smoking brisket somewhere in France in a small village from a really cool, maybe there's a ranch farm situation going on there. I probably built the cooker, and I would say the people that are at the table are just my good friends with a lot of good wine.
I have one more last one, but you keep alluding to building vessels or cookers. Did you build all of your cookers at Franklin right now? All your smokers?
Yeah, heck yeah, we did.
I don't know that I realized that. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, we're pretty, well, I should say I'm a pretty hardcore do-it-yourselfer. And if you want it done a certain way, you should probably just do it yourself.
All right, man. Well, thank you. Appreciate your time. This has been a pleasure to talk with you. I'm sure we could go off and do 30 more minutes on coffee or welding or, like you said, the hobbies du jour.
Yeah. Well, anytime you shoot me a text and I'll be there.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate your time.
Heck yeah. Thank you so much. Good talking.
Thanks again to Chef Aaron Franklin. Find him on Instagram at Franklin Barbecue. To learn more about Southern Smoke, go to southernsmoke.org. We'll share links in the episode notes and at beyondtheplatepodcast.com. And while this may have been our season finale, be on the lookout for a fun mini-series brought to you by our friends at PepsiCo Foods. This episode was produced by myself, along with Ian Cohen, Joel Yetton, and Sean Petrosian. Our digital media producer is Sarah McClellan-Mead. Our music has been composed by Goldford. Find him at iGoldford. As always, special shout out to my wife, Katie. If you have not started following me yet, you should. Find me across all social media at OnCappy's Plate, or go to beyondtheplatepodcast.com and keep up to date with Beyond the Plate. Beyond the Plate is also on social at BT Plate Podcast. If you have a moment, we'd be grateful of your support by rating, reviewing, and even hitting that subscribe button to the podcast. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Plate. I'm Cappy, and remember, there are never too many cooks in the kitchen.